Yeah, so I want to talk about why gold has such a negative sort of stigma attached to it. There's a couple things. Number one, if you say that you own any gold or that you invest a little bit of your money in gold, immediately people think you're like a doomer and gloomer, or worse, like a conspiracy theorist. All sorts of like kind of negative things, and they say a lot of negative things too about gold, like, it won't earn you any interest, it's just it's a lump of rock, does nothing, it costs to store, it's just a shiny rock or something like that. But I want to talk about some of these things. We'll just kind of sit back and unpack a few of these ideas and perceptions and that. For the first thing I want to address is the conspiracy theory part of gold. There is a lot of gold bugs out there, and these are like some of the more extreme. And it might not even be on the fringe, I'm not sure, but they seem to be conspiracy theorists. Basically, the government's screwing everybody. They're ripping us off. Everything's artificially inflated. There's a lot of, what we're seeing is not real. Inflation numbers aren't real. The government's hiding something. The government's controlling and manipulating all these things and events for its own nefarious ends. And I really feel like these gold bug conspiracy theories really do a disservice to gold in general, to the idea of gold. Gold has been very unpopular, not just in the past 10 years, even like the past 20. It was very unpopular. I remember in the mid-2000s. Now, this is a period of time when gold was actually rising in price. People were like, I don't want to own anything to do with that. For all the same reasons. It's always the same reasons that people give for not wanting to own gold. It doesn't pay a dividend. It does nothing. It won't appreciate in value. 100 years from now, you'll still just have a rock. And all you can hope for is that it's like, it moves with inflation and stuff like that. But I really feel a lot of that is, again, it goes back to like these conspiracy theories. You're treated as kind of like a pariah if you mention gold. I mean, I had people like kind of snicker when I mentioned I own a little bit of gold. Or the idea that you have to that if you own stocks, you just have to own stocks. You just have to be a dividend investor. I don't buy any of that crap, and for a few good reasons. Number one is diversification. And when we talk about diversification, we don't really just mean diversifying, among stocks or among different sectors of the stock market. Because my stock portfolio isn't diversified. I'm overweight like banks and other dividend stocks, utilities, pipelines. I have no healthcare. I have no or very few natural resource stocks. I don't own any tech except for in like an index fund. So my portfolio isn't diversified. But even if it were, even if I had a whole bunch of different index funds, the S&P 500, maybe a Canada index, international, maybe an emerging market or something like that. Even that's not that diversified because I'm still in one asset class, equity, stocks. So what do we usually do for diversification? Well, we usually add bonds, bond fund, or sometimes even like a T-bill or money market or whatever. But really, even if you do that, you're only diversifying among a couple different asset classes. Bonds do tend to do well when stocks decline. It's true. But what I like about gold and gold stocks, primarily gold the metal though, is that it freaking soars when the stock market collapses. You'll get an initial sell-off in gold as people, sell whatever they can to make their margin calls and stuff like that. But typically it rises quite substantially after. We saw this after 2008. We saw it like in 2000 with the tech bubble crashed. Gold started its ascent. And now in 2020 with this coronavirus pandemic and all the economic pain and shutdown, we're seeing it again. Things are, gold's rising fast. Gold stocks have probably doubled in the past year. But yet people still, cling to this idea that gold is a bad investment and stuff like that. My thoughts on gold are that even just a little bit in a portfolio, or if you hold it personally, like in physical form, it just adds a whole other layer of diversification. And diversification is really key in investing. There's been studies that have shown, if you hold 25% gold, 25% cash, 25% bonds, 25% stocks, over the last, 30 years, something crazy, like you would have done quite well. Gold has soared off of its lows. Cash, you just kind of get inflated away, but bonds, there's a bull market in bonds, that have pushed yields to like zero or like a real interest rate of like in the negatives. Stocks have also soared. You would have just made out like killer. So why is it that a lot of people don't see the value in owning gold, and they don't even see it as an insurance? Most people, if they want to diversify or if they want to feel safe with their investments, they keep cash on hand, a little bit of cash, maybe 5-10% cash. But to me, you kind of want things that perform better in times of crises. And when the stock market collapses, it can be a really frightening thing. No one likes to see their investments go down 25, 30, 40, 50, in 2009, I believe it was around 45-50% or something like that. On this most recent crash, I think the lows was like in the around 30% or something like that. That's a pretty significant 30-35% drop. That's a big drop. And to happen in only just a matter of days. Like before you can even really get your bearings, basically all your investments evaporate before your eyes, and you don't even really understand why. But then that's what I'm saying. Like that's where gold comes in. That's where gold can be effective. As everything crashed, gold immediately started to rise. It sold off along with stocks and everything else in that initial sell-off. But then as soon as those margin calls were covered and stuff like that, instantly money started flowing into gold. And now we're making all-time highs. Even while the market has seen a tepid recovery at best. Companies have cut their dividends, their guidance. They've either removed all their guidance for the rest of the year, or they've changed it to reflect really bad economic data and stuff like that. So that's where I see the value of gold. Gold is really a protector of a portfolio. And you don't need very much, because like when it does kind of move, it really, really, really takes off. So that's my spiel on gold.